Hi everyone, I'm Alex Rozenfeld, founder of Freshwater Investments, and this is Coffee with a T-Bird podcast. I sit down with fellow T-Birds who are making an impact in business, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Each episode features conversations that explore the pivotal moments, personal motivations, and lessons learned on their journeys. Whether you're a student, alum, or someone passionate about business and personal growth, you'll walk away with fresh ideas. This is a bit more than a podcast. It's a platform for connections, storytelling, and celebrating the global spirit of Thunderbird. This podcast is sponsored by Freshwater Investments. At Freshwater, we make it simple for you to invest in large apartment communities across the United States so you can earn passive income, grow your capital, and benefit from real estate tax breaks without owning or managing property yourself. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Rozenfeld, founder and managing partner of Freshwater Investments. My guest today is Marc Sondheimer. Marc is an Academy Award-winning producer whose career spans some of Pixar's most iconic films. Since joining Pixar in 2001, he has worked across finance, production, and creative leadership on films like The Incredibles, WALL-E, Finding Dory, and Coco. He won an Oscar for producing the beloved short Piper, and has pushed the boundaries of storytelling through VR, commercials, and episodic content like Cars on the Road. With a background that blends business strategy, entrepreneurship, and creative production, Marc brings a unique perspective on what it takes to turn great ideas into award-winning stories. Today, he's helping shape the future of animation at Skydance Animation. Marc, welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Alex. What a lovely introduction. Nice job. Thank you. You make me sound great.
Appreciate it. Welcome to the show. Let's start with a moment that happened in 2017. I was blown away that we're gonna talk about the Oscar moment for you. You won an Oscar in 2017 for the short animated movie Piper, which is an amazing story, amazing visuals, great quality production. So can you take me back to that day? You walking into Dolby Theater, how you feel? What do you feel like? Do you know that you're going to win, or you have doubts? And just take me through that day. I'm sure it was quite a journey.
Yeah, the day was very special, of course. It was a few years back, so I'll have to tickle my memory a little bit. But we stayed at I was fortunate to be staying at the Four Seasons Hotel, so actually had a nice, lovely morning in the pool, hanging out. And the biggest thing I'd say about leading up to the ceremony was that we had made a short we were very proud of, and we knew that the response was very positive, but Pixar had not won the Oscar for a short film since their very first, or not, since their early ones from back about 20 something years prior. And so we were told very early on in the whole Oscar campaign, once we were nominated by our by our PR department, that just enjoy the month, enjoy the whole process of the nomination, because it is about a month long of events and whatnot, but you're not going to win. So the main thing is we were pretty relaxed. We were hanging out by the pool. We had, and I say we, myself, my girlfriend at the time, and the director, Alan Barillero. And so we were pretty, I'd say, relaxed. We had the night before kind of sketched out sort of, if we win, a speech kind of a thing, because we knew we wanted to at least be prepared. And our PR department asked us to practice that later that morning of the day. So in general, I'd say we were pretty relaxed. Like, hey, this is great. This has been such a fun ride. No expectations whatsoever. And you get ready to go. You leave. You do the whole red carpet thing. We get there probably around 3:00, and you do the red carpet, and I was just soaking it all in, enjoying the experience, and taking photos with Jackie Chan and like other stars that you were kind of like, oh, this will be fun. Hey, I'm on the red carpet with um, all kinds of fun stars that I was uh, impressed by, etc. And doing interviews, and you go in the theater at some point, and you take it's a long time actually on the red carpet. And one little funny micro story is like, I think, as I said, we got there at 3, and I think we were on the red carpet for, I don't know, 2 or almost 3 hours, just kind
Oh
of
wow.
walking
So
through,
it's
and
like a
we were taking our time. Yeah. And I finally got inside and went to the men's restroom, and it was one star after another in the urinal stars. and Mahershala Ali, who won that year for Best Supporting Actor, he walked in, and he just kind of got the whole room laughing, because he was like, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness, this feels so." We finally made it into the bathroom. So anyway, small aside, but yeah, we get into the theater, and we were sitting in the back. Animated short film is not one of the primary categories, and so I was still kind of relaxing for an hour, and the theater is huge, and you don't realize the scale of it, I think, on television. But it's, it's a quad decker, like balconies, etc. But then about an hour and something into the show, they kind of tap you and say, okay, your category is coming after the commercial break. We're going to move you down to seats up front. And so kind of, we knew we were moving up front. And at that point is when the heart started racing.
Started
Like,
racing. Wow.
okay, wow, this is our category. And what were the lines I was going to say if
Adrenaline
we
started
win?
kicking in.
And they were very specific prior to the ceremony. There's a luncheon, Oscars lunch, which is actually it's about a couple weeks prior. And it's a wonderful event for all the nominees. And they just put all the nominees and other luminaries there. And they tell us that your category only has a very specific time after whatever, you will find out how long you have your category to speak, and then the music is going to play no matter what. And that year they were very like, we need to be on time this year. They made a big deal out of it, and they told us in the in our luncheon for just animation nominees that our category was going to have, I think it was 2 minutes from the moment they announced the award. So like, okay. So Alan and I had practiced our speech, and Alan, I think, was having some challenges with some of the phrasing of the words. And I sort of gave him some kind of specific wording about his little pipers, his kids.
Oh, that was beautiful. I was emotional watching that. I watched that on YouTube just yesterday.
The speech. Okay.
That speech, and that was
when
great.
We had practiced it, and he could not get the phrasing of the wording, the phrasing correct as he was repeating the speech by memory. And we kept practicing it, like, a couple times that morning. And anyway, it was like, all right, you're going to be fine, Alan. You'll get it. Anyway, I'm making this story long, but
No, that's fine. That's a fascinating story.
So we're up in the seats, and the end of the commercial break, and I'd been a competitive tennis player, and so I sort of got into this, like, eyes closed, deep breathing, sort of picturing myself up on the stage and relaxed, and you're gonna be okay. Don't let your racing heart, stay in control. And so I had done this kind of breathing exercise with my eyes closed to prep. The kind of curtains come up, or not the curtains, the light comes on, and they're announcing the category. And I open my eyes, and I look over at Alan, and he is sitting there, I'm not joking, with his fingers in his teeth, like so nervous, I could see. And I just started laughing. I have a photo of it, actually, of him just like with his hands in his mouth. It was classic. Anyway, and they announced the award, and I'd say I was shocked. And we were both like, oh my gosh, and take a minute. We know we only have 2 total minutes, so we both kind of run onto the stage. If you see it, we're kind of both running pretty towards the stage. And Alan gives his speech, and I'm watching him give his speech because, the phrasing, and he nailed it. And it was such a beautiful moment for me to see him kind of really nail his speech. And I had told my niece that, like, okay, I'm just going to be short and sweet, but I had, something prepared. But if I see Emma, I'm blanking on her last name right now, but I hope I don't see her in the audience, because I sort of had a little thing for her. And and Alan finishes, and I go up to the microphone, and I look up, and blaring in my face there's a huge teleprompter in the crowd, and it says, "Wrap it up." And with this guy with these big white gloves doing this, "Get off the stage." And then the teleprompter is saying, "Get off the stage." So before I had a second to speak, it was wrap it up and then get off the stage. And I told myself, don't look at that. And I looked down, and there was Emma. I'm blanking on her last name. I'll think of it in a minute. With her big, beautiful eyes looking up at me. And I was just a mess. Anyway, so I had to completely make up my speech in the moment, because I knew I didn't have time to say what it was that I had wanted to say, which was always kind of a little funny moment for me.
You did manage to say thank you to the team and to people. So
yeah, it was I had to edit on the fly, as they say, and then we won, and then you go backstage, and it's a crazy procession of people with clipboards and headphones, who are running the show, and it was just one after another, and they're all congratulating you. And there's you go to various places where these tons of photographers and this and that. There's a cool hallway called Winner's Walk, which has different photos of luminaries who've got their Academy Awards and are just when they walk backstage, and they have these big photos, and it's this big long hallway, and you walk down this hallway, and that was just an amazing moment to feel like, wow, this actually happened. You just can't believe it. And I will say that I, as a kid, would dream of it. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my life or my career. I dreamt of being an actor or something. And it was a dream of mine. And so to have that dream realized was really very, very special for me. Very
amazing.
Personal moment. But it was just a thrill. It's, who knows? You never know when you're making the film. We weren't even thinking about that at all, or that wasn't even a goal. We were just trying to make a good movie and actually not get shut down. The movie did get shut down 3 different times, but we just kept going anyway. So how's that for a little Oscar story for you?
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing it. With all the challenges, all the excitement that you went through. And while we were talking before the show, you showed me the actual Oscar. Do you mind sharing it to our audience who's gonna watch the episode?
This one?
Here you go.
No, not that one.
And here's the real one. Here's the real.
Yeah. So Alex, you can give
congratulations.
A speech now. Here.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's heavy. It's truly heavy. About 8 pounds, I think, or 8 or 10.
So did you have to carry it all night alone?
Well, yeah, you do. And it's kind of a ticket into the Vanity Fair party. Or first you get to go to there's the Governor's Ball, which is right next door to the Dolby Theater. And that's where they do the engraving. So pretty much most of the winners go over, and it's a big, nice catered food, finally,
Hmm.
drinks, and yeah, various every people coming up to you if you have the Oscar, whether they know who you are or not, like wanting to take photos with you, and that's kind of fun. Get get to meet various people, and then the Vanity Fair party. If you have an Oscar, you just hold it up
As
outside
your ticket.
if your car window, if you're getting driven or driving yourself, whatever, and they just wave you through, and so you kind of carry it around at the Vanity Fair party, or if you Elton John's party or whatever party you happen to go to. And then,
That's great. Who was performing at your party? Did you have a
there was no musical performances. It's just a party basically with open bar and lots of all the it, really fun group of people, of artists, of Hollywood and other artists, TV folks, and, you know, some very funny incidents, I'd say. Really a wonderful
great?
night. And then the next morning, you have to put that little Oscar in, you have to run it through airport security.
That's probably was a fun experience. You mentioned something that was your childhood dream, so I guess it's a good segue to go and talk a little bit about your childhood. You mentioned that you grew up in Marin County, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. Lots of hiking, forest, lakes, very nice little towns. Just a little north of San Francisco when you cross the Bay Bridge. And a wonderful, I assume, wonderful place to grow up. Tell me more about your family, your parents, about you growing up there, what it was like.
Well, I mean, as you described it, it's an idyllic place, and it's just just across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco, and it's got the physical attributes of it. It's near the beach. You have the bay. You've got hills, so you've gorgeous views. You have a mountain, so great trails. A lovely, idyllic place to grow up. It really is in many ways. And my father was a doctor, and my mother was a librarian, but really kind of an artist. And my dad was always very sure to point out that the rest of the whole world is not Marin County, and was very, always instilling in us how, to be grateful for what we had and to appreciate it, because the rest of the world is not necessarily like that. And he was born in Germany and came over from Germany when he was a child. And so, he had definitely a global perspective, shall we say. But I sort of have a little bit of that blend of my father, the kind of scientific method person, and the scientist, the physician, and my mom, who is very well read as a librarian and a reference librarian, and extremely, knows about, is very interested in everything and curious, but also an artist, and has that kind of artist way about her. And I was sort of a real blend of the two. And I loved doing theater when I was a kid. I loved doing sports. I loved doing anything with leadership kind of things, and was probably naturally good at sort of the numbers side of things as a kid or throughout high school. But those were kind of the features of me growing up, I'd say, or through my kind of high school and even into college life, where I did a blend of theater, leadership, and sports, athletics, and always kind of grounded in some type of like analytical looking at the world.
Were you a competitive tennis player?
Yeah, I played in high school, and, dabbled in college, and then beyond, I played for years and
Oh, that's great.
still play. Like,
On the USTA
yeah.
tournaments? Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played a little bit too
Oh, great.
until my
Yeah.
until my knees were fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, my shoulder, my knee are a disaster right now, so they show the signs of too many years playing.
Too many sets played.
Way too many. Not and, with incorrect form for my arm.
Yeah. And did you have any interesting jobs while you were in high school or college, or side hustles?
Well, my first job was working in a movie theater. I worked at the Tiburon Playhouse in
There you
Tiburon,
go.
California, and when I was 14. So, that was prescient, I guess. And that was my first job. But when I turned 16, literally 1 week after I turned 16, I became a valet parking attendant in Sausalito, California. It was right on the water, so it had the most gorgeous view. I was outside and I was working with my friends, and I did that job through college and beyond because it was a great, wonderful job with friends, and the pay was quite good. And it afforded me a lot of, I kind of had to pay my way through college, and it really paid my way through college without debt, fortunately. Back then, college wasn't as expensive, but it kind of gave me a little bit of taste of, we kind of ran the business, myself and my friends, for many, many years. And so that kind of responsibility of running a very small little operation, I'd say that was my high school and through college. I also became a river guide in college, and I point to that and even bring it up now only because I felt like that experience of kind of leading people out in the wilderness and sharing the outdoors and my own passion for the outdoors, but just kind of leading a diverse group of people and taking them on an adventure really taught me a lot about people and leading and my own self, and gave me some confidence in that arena, I think. And so I bring that up a lot in anytime I'm um,
Yeah. No,
interviewing or whatnot. Yeah.
that's an incredible experience. And I mean, running small business or leading people in the wilderness, that's what gives you, like you mentioned, confidence, and that experience that you can't replicate in other scenarios, right? Just by going to classes and studying business, it's impossible to get that experience and to to kind of get those skills that
Yeah.
you can use later on. Later on. Awesome. And so you went to Berkeley for your undergrad.
Yes.
What did you study in Berkeley?
The ever useful major of sociology. And I was, for most universities, I would have been a theater minor. I
Hmm.
took a lot of theater classes, and I also took probably enough classes to do a business minor in most places, but Berkeley didn't have minors. So, anyway, I was a sociology major, and I chose that by, I was undecided what to do. And I think there was a day where I had to choose after probably my sophomore year. And I remember I just like put check marks next to all the classes in some of the fields that were the closest that I was thinking of becoming a major in. And sociology had the most check marks. So I became a sociology major, and
Got
enjoyed
it.
it. Actually, I really enjoyed social theory quite a bit and had a wonderful social theory teacher.
Did you try to get actor gigs after graduation? Did you try to go into theater?
Yes and no. My first job after college was working in Bali, Indonesia, doing clothing production for a Berkeley-based wholesaler. And it was, it's a whole side story, but yeah, that was my first job out of college, was other
So
than
you
river
what you
guiding in the summers, but
about
yes.
20, 22, 23, and you're going to Bali?
Correct. I was, yeah, exactly, 22, and I had no idea how to sew a button on a shirt, and I could not speak a sentence of Indonesian or Balinese. And I was on a plane to Bali. The wholesaler was quite large, actually. We were doing quite a hefty amount of production. Clothing from Indonesia, and specifically Bali at that time, was very hot. It was very kind of in the zeitgeist, and they were the largest exporter at that time from Bali. It was a company
Hmm.
called We Bebop, and I learned a lot, actually, a ton, and I loved it. It was difficult. It wasn't as romantic as, of course, it sometimes sounds, as
Yeah.
people from Thunderbird often know, that, like, working in another country can be wonderful, but it's often not as glamorous as it might
Can
first
be
appear.
lonely as well, right?
Can be lonely, can be hot. I was in factory floors for hours, and hot factory floors for hours at a time, but an amazing experience. So that was my first job. And then I taught tennis and did theater for Club Med for just under 2 years. So I did use my theater. I
Mm-hmm.
did use my tennis and worked for Club Med, which is I think they're still around,
Oh yeah,
company and
yeah, yeah.
hotel. And
They are around.
did that for a couple of years and was always river guiding in between all of these experiences. And then eventually came back home to the Bay Area and started a business, actually. So an international business.
What kind of business?
Did importing clothing, but mostly furniture from Indonesia again. And we eventually moved into Costa Rica and importing from Costa Rica as well. And I had that for about 4 years.
Got it. Got it. And how did Thunderbird came into the picture? How did he hear about the school, and why did you decide to go to Thunderbird?
So I uh, I'd heard of Thunderbird, I think, because I had started doing international business, and
Mm-hmm.
somehow somewhere along the way, I had heard about Thunderbird. And the truth is, after I finished, before I, like right when I was starting the business, after I had kind of returned from doing a lot of these travels and this overseas work and whatnot, I came back and I was not sure what I wanted to do. I was applying for consulting jobs or various things. And I applied to business schools. I applied to, in my not so infinite wisdom, I applied to, I think, Stanford, Harvard, Thunderbird, and Stanford, Berkeley. So just a couple of schools. And I wasn't sure, really what I wanted to do. And I also actually was working with a career coach at the time about like really thinking about what it was I wanted to do now that I've done a lot of overseas travel and various things and living. And he was very intense, this guy. He was based here in Walnut Creek in the Bay Area, and he had some Native American in him. And if you ever wanted a career coach, he's phenomenal, but also probably like the hardest teacher you've ever had in your life, because he did not take any nonsense. He made you work. He made you write. He made you read, gave you homework. You had to come back and meet with him, give him your homework, and he'd write pages and pages of responses back to you about what he was seeing. And I'm telling you about him partly because he, in his analysis of all that he had taken in about me, he said that I should become a producer and really get into theater or film or even dance. And that's how I was going to be happy in life, is that if I took whatever job I possibly could towards angling towards becoming a producer, owner of a small theater company,
Mm-hmm.
that's really what, like, he called it a daemon, a creative daemon. You have this thing. And he was very intense about that. Like, this is what
Wow.
you need to do. And
And so he gave you just that option. Like he said that's the way for you. He was
that's
like,
the way for
okay,
you.
got it.
And
Wow,
there were other
amazing.
things that were less so, maybe, but that was sort of the North Star. And I remember thinking, like, at the time, I think I was 26, and thinking, wow, how am I going to get into this field? I don't really want to go down to LA. I also didn't want to become like a, production assistant getting coffee for somebody. It just wasn't kind of my style. I applied to business schools, or I had it sort of at that same time applied to business
Mm-hmm.
schools, and then started this business after meeting somebody, this guy who, anyway, another side story. Anyway, we had the business for a couple of years, and I had gotten into Thunderbird. So 26, I got into Thunderbird. I got into Berkeley and Thunderbird, nowhere else. And Thunderbird offered me a scholarship, and I delayed it. I said, no, I started this business. I'm going to keep going in this business. And I worked in this business. I had it for almost 3 years, and I got and it was, the roller coaster of having a
Yeah,
business,
typical
international
entrepreneurship
business, some
journey.
ups and downs. And my business partner was much older, and he told me after this really successful trade show that he wanted to raise a bunch of money, millions of dollars. He saw this huge opportunity for importing plantation teak out of Costa Rica. He wanted to buy a factory and develop it. And I said, I want no part of that. Literally that same day, Thunderbird called and said, you cannot defer any longer. If you come this year, your scholarship we'll honor that, but
Hmm.
no longer after this year. And this was July of whatever year I started at Thunderbird. And, I'll just never forget that day, that night where we had a few martinis, and I told my business partner, like, you know what, I'm out. Like, I'm going to go off to Thunderbird. I'm going to go to graduate school, with kind of the idea in my mind that that would be a way to try and get into entertainment or the arts management at
Stepping
a
stone.
level that felt good for me. The next day, so that was kind of, I called Thunderbird, said, I'll come. I think it was like late July, and I think I had to be in Thunderbird a couple of weeks later. And I called the career coach to tell him like that I was going to Thunderbird, and I'll never forget him yelling at me in the phone saying, "You're making the biggest mistake of your life. You need to go get a internship at a film company or a television studio. You're going to regret this the rest of your life." And I remember him screaming and yelling, and I said to him, like, I know it sounds crazy. I know it's not the normal path, but I have a thought that this is how I can somehow get to where I want to go.
And that's your path, and you taking it right and taking responsibility for it. You don't regret that decision.
No, I don't regret it at all. And my grandfather always said they can never take education away from you. And so, learning something is always something you've got. And I always felt like, I always remembered that. And so I felt like getting a graduate degree gives you skills, it gives you knowledge, and it's up to you to then try and go make it what with those abilities and skills. And I joined the entertainment club as soon as I got to Thunderbird.
There you go. Did you perform at regional nights?
No, no, that was pretty much the end of my actually performing. Never, even to this day, I've stopped. I'm more quote unquote behind the camera.
So how was your Thunderbird experience? Any favorite memories from that time?
Well, I think, as all Thunderbirds know, one of the most amazing things is that your cohorts, your peers are from all over the world. And, you're truly sitting in a class. You're a citizen of the world. I think that was on the gates there. The saying, which, boy, I wish more people would think about that in this day and age, because that is really, truly how I feel, that I am really a citizen of the world as much as I am of this country. And so you learn from working alongside and sitting in classrooms and working on projects with people from all over the world. I distinctly remember these very wonderful folks from Russia, from India, from South America, this very super bright people from Mexico, and just kind of sitting in classrooms with cohorts that were really truly global was, I think, one of the first things that really struck me.
Yep.
And I'd say, I don't know if he still teaches there, but not Sundaram. We call him the Great Sundarami. Um, he was It was corporate finance, And he was sort of like that career coach that I had. He was hard, difficult, challenged you. The class was not easy, but boy, did I learn that corporate finance because of that. So those were among various highlights or moments that stood out to me.
That's great. That's great. How did you? So let's talk about your producer career and how you become one. How did you? So you had that North Star in front of you, and how did you find this job at?
Well, one of the things they say about the most useful thing about graduate school is not just what you learn, but who you meet and
Yep.
the network you get. Really, you could trace all the right back to somebody that I met at Thunderbird. And so right after Thunderbird, and while I was going to Thunderbird was basically the dawn of the internet and was Internet 1.0, and kind of like how we're hearing AI everywhere right now. Back then, when I was at Thunderbird, it was internet.com.com. And it was like, changing the world. And so my first job out of, I did an internship at an internet company in between first and second year. And after Thunderbird, my first job was with a company called Quokka Sports, which was revolutionizing the way the world experiences sports. And so what a wonderful hybrid of my sports interests and management and business, and arts and entertainment. And it was a really cool company. And but I got the job really through somebody that I knew from um, Thunderbird, who had already started working there, and sent my resume to him, and blah, blah, went through the whole crazy process of interviews and all the things. And so that's how I got into Quokka ultimately, was, or at least had my resume looked at, I'd say.
Yeah, that's so important.
And I had it was an amazing company, amazing, very forward thinking company. I But I always actually, and so at Thunderbird, I had written a case in, I don't know if it was Sundaram's class or an accounting class. Actually, it must have been Sundaram's class about Pixar. And it was Pixar had made at the time one film, Toy Story, and was about to come out with their second film, A Bug's Life, and they were going public. And the paper was about how would you value a company that's going public that has made one film that is making movies, which are inherently unpredictable. And it was computer generated animation. Anyway, so I had my eye on Pixar, and I really, I had seen Toy Story here at Berkeley on campus and was completely blown away by it. That was a very distinct memory of mine. And so I kind of continued to sort of get the job board at Pixar while I was at Quokka. And anyway, I was negotiating rights deals for Quokka Sports. We were getting official sports digital rights to sporting events. We had the Olympics, and did the US Open in golf. At the time, people didn't understand the value of digital rights. Anyway, I was negotiating to do the Ryder Cup, which is and be the official site for the Ryder Cup, which is a big golf event.
Tournament, yep.
And so I put together this spreadsheet, and I was pretty facile with spreadsheets. I also had this intern from Columbia who was really facile with spreadsheets, and the two of us put together this but I'd say he did the heaviest lifting of this very slick spreadsheet to analyze this deal for the Ryder Cup, for PGA.com, and the Ryder Cup for our company Quokka. They asked me to come to the board meeting, and Quokka was publicly traded. It had 1,500 people. It was a pretty big concern. Come to the board meeting and present this deal. I'm like, okay. So I had this presentation, PowerPoint that just kind of summarized the deal. And I remember somebody one of the board members said, "I don't understand how you get these numbers. Can you pull up, do you have a spreadsheet?" And so in the middle of this board meeting, I do, which I would not recommend to anybody out there ever listening. Do not do this. But I said, okay. And we opened up the spreadsheet and I showed the spreadsheet to the board so that she could see some of these assumptions we had been making. At the time, things were preposterous in Internet 1.0 land and how much you were thinking you would make. But the spreadsheet allowed us to really, in a simple little box, tweak a whole bunch of assumptions, and it would just spit out all the end result. It's kind of normal spreadsheet stuff, but it was pretty detailed with very thorough P&Ls and all kinds of craziness. And they kept asking me to click through, "Oh, show us how you get that." And like in the middle of this board meeting, and we were like showing the work of this spreadsheet. Long story short, at the end of the meeting, somebody said, "That's really the best spreadsheet I've ever seen in my life." And it was this woman who at the time was working at Pixar. And I found that out afterwards when she said that to me.
Yeah, LinkedIn wasn't a thing yet.
Exactly. And she was the controller there, a temporary controller. I don't know, like a month or two later, I sent her a note just saying, "Hey, I saw this position open up in finance at Pixar. Would you mind if bringing my resume to the hiring person of it?" And so I later found out there was about 100 or 200 resumes, on that desk. And I didn't have kind of a strict accounting background, but I was to do production accounting on the feature films. And I just bluffed my way in through the interviews and knowing that eventually I would try and want to become a producer. But I got hired partly because I had sort of different experience, I'd say, than what they were used to for people applying to that job. But ultimately, as I said, I can trace getting in through the gates of Pixar because of somebody that I knew at Quokka Sports through Thunderbird.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's a long answer to your question. And I got into Pixar and I started doing finance on the films. And I'll let you ask, I'll shut up here in a second, but I'll say
and then
knew
eventually it led you to the producer role. How did
exactly.
that happen?
Yeah.
Like,
and
what?
so
I'm sure it wasn't like a straight line promotion from finance to being a producer. I'm sure you had that goal in mind, and you were making those small steps every day to get there. What was your thinking like? What was your mindset like to get there?
Yeah. As we now know from this interview, like from basically day one. Now, I didn't tell them this, but I sort of in my mind thought I wanted to try and figure out how to get on the production track to become a producer. So that was in my mind. But I felt like, okay, first I need to do a good job and try and understand this finance and accounting stuff, which, boy, was that a learning curve for me. And so I was hired on I worked on in production accounting, and that gave me a great foundation for understanding kind of from a big picture how the films are made, kind of a planning perspective, and understanding also down to the pennies how the films are made and where all the budgets and you're basically doing budgets and overseeing the budget for the films. And at the time, Pixar didn't really have any kind of strategy group or arm. It was still very startup-y, believe it or not. And so the folks that could build spreadsheets and presentations were often doing kind of very businessy analysis for the company too. Anyway, I did the finance I just focused on the finance and trying to do a good job I remember in my mind, I kept saying, like, you got to do it for 2 films, get through 2 films and do a good job for 2 films. And then, then you can try and make a move. And so I worked on Incredibles and then Cars and a whole slew of short films. And I started working on WALL-E, and I remember thinking, okay, I had discussed with the production leadership, is there a way that I can get some experience in production to, there's a whole corporate ladder, or there's a whole ladder of production of, PA, coordinator, manager, production manager, EP, producer, like, very, very distinct realms. And I remember the head of productions at the time, basically it was like, there is a moat. There is a moat between finance and production, and you cannot cross that moat. Sorry. And I thought, what a bummer. But there was a new producer on Wall-E who had come over from Lucasfilm, and he had been the president of Lucasfilm, and he is now the president at Pixar. But he was kind of a deal maker and pretty open and new, obviously incredibly experienced and incredibly smart. And I remember I just made him an offer. I said, hey, Jim, how about if I make you an offer? I'm going to do 2 jobs for the price of 1 on your film. I will manage a department in production and do the finance on your film. And if I'm doing a crappy job, you can fire me from one or both. And Jim, being the deal maker, was like, okay, like if you think you can do 2 jobs and I get 2 jobs for the price of 1 for 4 years, great. So that's how Jim had control, instead of having it be coming from the head of productions, to basically go for that deal. And so I managed the sets department on Wall-E and did the finance on Wall-E. And then from there, kind of was given more opportunities in production. I was asked if I wanted to be the head of production finance after Wall-E. There was a change in the leadership in finance. And I said, no, I wanted to just roll the dice in production and try and keep climbing. And because that's, as we have learned on this interview, that's where my heart was. And it worked out. And, I got an opportunity to produce or associate produce or production manage a short film called Day and Night after Wall-E was finished. And then I was asked to be an associate producer for The Good Dinosaur, which the version the world never saw.
I'm going to ask you about
Sure.
producing. So if you can talk about being, what does it mean to be a producer? Like being producer 101 kind of overview, and you can talk about your experience, what you were doing.
Sure, 101. I'd say, first of all, it depends on the studio, also the type of project. Television producing is very different than film producing, or what a producer's responsibilities are. Animation producing is somewhat different than live action producing as well. And producing for a studio is different than producing out there in the real world. So the first thing is, the producer is basically, you're responsible for getting the project made. So from, idea to the screen and to the release. And so almost like the CEO of a project, or a project manager, really, is what kind of a producer does. Anything that needs to get done to get a project made and film made. Out in the real world, sometimes that means a non-studio job. Sometimes that means raising money and overseeing the process to raise money for a film. Inside a studio, maybe you already have the money, so you're not trying to raise money for something. You're more thinking about anything that you need to do to get a project done and made, and whether the creative is good or not, or who are the leaders of various departments of the project. You're interviewing them and hiring them and figuring out who is good, who you want to work with, dealing with. Essentially, it's problem solving. More or less, that's the job, is just problem solving. And whatever needs doing, whether the story needs work or people are fighting on the crew or whatever it is. But you oversee the budget, you oversee the process of making a film. So that's producing 101.
And what, like, if you were starting today, what would you recommend people if they want to get into producing movies or animated films? How should they approach building their career and getting into that field? Asking for a friend. Oh, wait.
Yeah, sure. Get a job doing clothing production in Bali, become a river guide, work at Club Med. Think, first of all, I'd say you genuinely want to have a passion for kind of entertainment, and it needs to tug at your heartstrings in some way, shape, or form, because it's not an easy path. It's super competitive. So there has to be some kind of, I think a want there. And to just try and stay deeply focused. I don't think there's any one path, really. I think, like anything, you need some luck, you need a break, you need to get experience, and any any kind of experience. And I say this because in my 23 years at Pixar, I was often part of little hiring teams to hire. Either we had a very robust and have a very robust internship program at Pixar. And also just when we needed people to staff up a film, I was often part of kind of resume reviews and whatnot, interviewing committees. Was just any kind of experience at all in the field of film, TV, theater that you can somehow play up on your resume is obviously super valuable. Usually it starts with, I did who knows what, summer theater camp. And then summer theater camp led to an internship at a local community theater, which then led to I got a job doing TV production for who knows what. I was a PA for this TV show or that kind of thing. And that's certainly one path. And that's probably the most common path, I'd say, of people who eventually make their way into kind of a leadership position in film or television, like a producer role. Obviously, there's college film programs and college and university graduate school programs. There's some, UCLA has a producing school and program. So does USC, New York. You can do that. And those, obviously that opens doors. And I always felt like, I was just going to tell the story. Like if I could somehow get the interview, I was going to craft a story of why I am,
You had
I
quite,
am
you had,
the person for the job, but different, not necessarily an
yeah,
easy path.
well, amazing path. So let's spend a few minutes on your baby, the Piper film. What does it take to create a Oscar-winning short animated film?
Well, first you have to get fired from your prior position, which is actually how I often would say I only have that Academy Award because I got let go. I got replaced as associate producer on The Good Dinosaur. And it was out of those ashes that I got into working on, what the caterpillar calls the
So
end, the
you,
master calls the butterfly.
so you were fired from the project, not from Pixar.
Correct. Yeah. The movie I'd worked on, The Good Dinosaur, for 4 years, which was quite funny and we thought great, but it had some issues, like story issues that we'd been trying to solve, and the directors have been trying to solve. And just at some point, Pixar and Disney said, you know what, we're bringing in a new director and a new producer, and that producer wants their own associate producer. And so, they replaced the leadership. And boy, I thought that was the end. Like, okay, now what? And that's a very expensive decision for Pixar to make and Disney to make, to delay the release and start again, and etc. So there were layoffs, tough time. And obviously I had that role, my dream role, and thought that was kind of the end. And fortunately, the same producer from Wall-E, Jim, who at that point had become the president of Pixar, I had been offered a couple of roles outside of Pixar to produce. And I asked him to help me say no to them. And so he said, well, how about you? I mean, I helped out on Finding Dory and doing finance again and anything I could to stay in the gates because I wanted to stay at Pixar. And he said, well, there's a project in our software development group, and it's with this person I worked with on a couple of films, Alan Barillero, who was, kind of testing out some things. Why don't you go over and sort of work with him on his tests? And he's got a little story. And also, well, you can start doing some commercials maybe. And so I was like, great, wonderful. And so I went over to work with Alan. And at that point, he had sort of the shell of the story of, he was really testing a software tool basically to take one character, and by moving some, this is kind of computer animation 101, but like you make a model, it's got geometry to it. Takes a long time to make that model in the computer and put it's like a wire puppet. Think of that as a character. And Alan's test was to take that wire puppet and move some points around to make a different puppet, a different looking character without having to start from scratch. And so he took there was a bird in the movie Brave, and he pushed some points around to try and make a different bird. And that bird was not really what became Piper, but it was a different bird. And he had a test of a wave on a beach with a little bird running back and forth from it. And with sort of a couple other moments in the film. And anyway, I partnered with Alan and he, and a couple other people, we revved the story and presented it. And Andrew Stanton, who was the director of Finding Dory and Nemo and lots of Pixar films, he really liked the kind of core of the idea and thought it might pair nicely with Finding Dory. And so we came up with a game plan to make the film, and with anybody we could get to work on it at Pixar, and off we went making it.
And how long did it take you to create the movie?
We got shut down 3 different times because when The Good Dinosaur and Finding Dory were like, Good Dinosaur got delayed and Finding Dory was in a needed everybody kind of thing. We kept getting this, sorry Mark, the studio needs everybody to go work on Dory or Good Dinosaur or whatever else they were making. So we're shutting you down. We might not have a short film in front of Finding Dory, just the way that goes. I was very determined not to let that just sort of happen. So I used to like to roam the hallways and knock on people's doors and say, hey, can you in your spare time, maybe all we need is, can you just do this one little thing for us? And Alan and myself and maybe another person will kind of keep this football moving down the field, which is what happened. We kept just keeping it alive with anybody I could get to work on little aspects of it. Because we knew we had a cute little story and a really appealing character design. And so it was a miracle, frankly, that we over the course of probably a year and a half, even though I had the head of productions come into my office and calmly sit and tell me, no more. Stop what you're doing. I'm not giving you any people, and I'm not giving you any render farm resources. The studio needs the entire farm for this other stuff. We just kept going, kind of, yeah.
But you made it. It's with lots of determination and perseverance.
Yeah. And then, and I remember thinking like, if we just keep going and we have just enough to like show people what that it's got some charm to it, and that we can, and I kept saying how we just need a couple of people and we can get this thing done, and that it would become harder and harder to really shut us down, like just the more we could kind of make. And so eventually at some point the studio said, okay, go ahead, now you can try and finish it. And they in all of their wonderful way, both Pixar and Disney supported it. There's a whole machinery to kind of ultimately support getting into festivals and all the stuff. But at no point in time did I ever think like it was the awards or none of that was just not even part of actually the process in our minds. It was just, let's enjoy the process of making this film.
Do you ever create films with that thought in mind? hey, I want this film to win this award or that award? Or it's just about telling the story, making a great movie and good quality and stuff?
It's really the latter. Like I always had to post it, make it great. Um, you know, just the that was the goal. Stay on budget, finish on time, and make it great. If you hit any one of those, you're doing fine. But I that was my um objective, was really just to make a good experience and try and tell a good story, and have a good experience for the crew, and be responsible from the studio's perspective with the budget and the time, and try and tell the best story we can with those resources and with those constraints, really, your time and your budget. And
Well, was there a moment when you realized that this film might win something, might be competing for any awards?
no, in fact, you animation is like watching paint dry. It's long, it's a marathon. It's a slow process. There's, when you watch a movie, there's 24 frames per second. That makes it look like you're, watching something in motion, but it's 24 frames. And each one of those frames, really, in animation, have to get hand done. Even though it's computer animation, it's really hand. Think of it like, you know, a word processor program doesn't write the script. It helps you write, like, make it easy to write the script, easier than a typewriter, but that's what computer animation is like. You're essentially making all these choices in every single frame of this 9-minute movie or 8-minute movie. And so it's a long, slow process. And when you stare at those frames every day for hours on end and make little tiny tweaks to a mouth shape of Piper's, or how fast he blinks, or whatever the heck it is, it can feel like torture sometimes, unless you're, of course, an animator. But we showed the film for the first time at and in Annecy, France. There's an animation festival for animation nerds, and that was going to be the premiere. And I'll never forget thinking, like, we had not shown it to anybody at Pixar. I was always very guarded with it. I didn't want to show anybody except for the crew. And so I had seen it in its finished form, but as I said, by then I'd watched it a million times, and it's hard to, like, know if it's any good or if there's anything, really. You just wanted people to like it and hope people would laugh. And I remember I was with Alan, the director, backstage. We were going to introduce the film at Annecy, and there's this big auditorium in Annecy, France, and it's a bunch of animators from around the world, or people in the animation field from around the world at this festival. And it can be, they're the, I don't know, maybe if it's a tough crowd or not, actually, but it's people in the craft. And speaking of the Oscars, that was the most nervous I've ever been about the film, because, like, oh my God, this huge auditorium, we're going to introduce it, and I hope you like it. We were shut down 3 times. No, it was a labor of love, and it was a difficult process to make. I hope you like it, kind of thing. And I'll just never forget of A, how nervous I was. I wanted to throw up, and B, the feeling of relief that I got when you heard the first laugh, when the whole auditorium laughed. There was a moment in the film, that had a humor, and you just heard the laugh, and it was like,
Relief going through your body.
thank goodness, at least they laughed once. And so, yeah, there was never a thought at any time that, like, oh my God, I think we're going to win awards, or I hope, or whatever. And even then, like, after people seemed to really like it there, yeah, just made the movie, had a great time.
That's great. Congratulations again. I guess we started with Piper and we ending with Piper, but I'm running out of time, and I just wanted to ask you a few quick questions as we finish up this conversation. What advice would you give to a 20-year-old self, knowing what you know today and having all that experience?
I guess there were things that I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. and I used to stress about it quite a lot. But I had buckets, I had these. I would always kind of, at that time, back then, I was big at into my New Year's resolutions and like kind of that dreaming, basically, that dreaming of what you want to do. And I think it's important to think about the why, what it is you want to do and why it is you want to do it, and really understand go for things that you really understand why you want to do it. And it's deeply important to you. And it doesn't have to be a specific job. Like I want to be I don't know, fill in the blank, a producer, um, or a venture capitalist. Um, but you want to know why you want to do those things and think it through. For me, it was like, I called them like my buckets, which was sort of leadership and, and analytical problem solving and people oriented. Those were things I felt like I was good at. And those were things that I enjoyed genuinely. So those were like why I wanted to do something, and just getting experience in something that is a step towards whatever that bigger goal is, but that you knew why you were taking that step. And that step, for some of those why reasons, was on the path towards where it is you might eventually want to go, is all that matters, like in that moment. And to kind of go for it, what it is that you want to try and achieve in your life. This is our one life. This is our one chance, as far as we know, to do those things. And so you might, like, if you want to be an actor in Hollywood, you might not get you might not get a role like when you're 20. Okay. But maybe you take a job doing who knows what that has something to do with that eventual goal, and you know why it is that those two are related. So just getting experience that speaks to you is what I would say is the most
Yeah.
important thing, and just go for it. One other piece of advice, Alex, that helped me tremendously in my career, like once I was within production and producing, was try and find a mentor. Find somebody that you feel like you can truly learn from, that you respect how they conduct themselves or how they think through problems or how they approach their work. And you can make it explicit with them, that where you say, like, really respect how you do your work or how you approach your work or how you approach problems, whatever it is. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind just meeting with me periodically, um, and I can bounce ideas and how I'm approaching things and get your take about it. And also writing things down of how they approach things or words that come out of their mouth, because I had that. And I learned tremendously from somebody at both before I went to Pixar, somebody, and then, but specifically at Pixar, a producer who was there, who produced The Incredibles, who was, just taught me so much and taught me it's hard. And it's hard. You're not going to know everything. You might have good instincts, and that's fine. And you might have certain understandings, and that's fine. But really seek out a mentor and try and make it a very specific relationships where you
And
ask them to have lunch with you periodically. So that's another
would you
piece of advice.
would you build a relationship with that person first before asking to mentor you, or you would go with the ask to be a mentor?
Yeah, it's okay to ask to, I think, even if you maybe don't know the person very well, just send him a note, or him or her, and just say what it is that look, I respect who knows what it is, how you do whatever it is. Would you mind meeting with me for coffee? But make it a periodic thing, make it a scheduled event that you can bring things to them and have conversations with them, and And also I'd say I really am a believer in writing things down that
Hmm.
you kind of hear or you learn, and just so you can reference it. And um, anyway, that's
Excellent.
you don't need to know them. I don't think you need to know the person super well. You just have to be, you know, politely ask
Specific
for
about it,
some of
yes.
their time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's a great advice. Thank you. If you don't mind sharing your new North Star, because you became a producer, you won an Oscar, you moving that goal somewhere further, somewhere higher?
It's an excellent question, Alex. I left Pixar almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I've been freelancing and been happily, I called it pre-tired, but I still like the filmmaking. I still enjoy adventure. And the opportunity came that I felt like that spoke to those things in me. It's to produce a film at Skydance Animation, which is sort of small, but obviously got from pretty healthy financial backing. Some people might know, Skydance is kind of taking over Hollywood. David Ellison owns Skydance Animation. John Lasseter, who was the head creative at Pixar for many, many years, went to Skydance, and so he's there. So my new North Star is to make another film, produce a film. It's a feature film, so it's a feature, and it's got a very crazy, aggressive timeline. It's a 2 year, as of right now, when it's supposed to come out. They do their production work in Spain, in Madrid, and as a Thunderbird alum, I like this idea of kind of trying to figure out a global production pipeline. And I speak Spanish. I did live in Spain before, back in my college years. So I felt like it was a nice match of some of those, again, some of these circles of who I am. And if I was going to do another project in my life, like what would be some of these things that would be important to me? I've got the sort of great creative with Lasseter and the director of this film, and that's important. I liked those people that I've met with there, and chance to make another film, a piece of art that lives forever, and a studio that's small and growing where I can kind of hopefully bring some of my analytical skills to help it out.
That's
And I
awesome.
enjoy that. So that's my North Star, more sense
Awesome.
of
That's
adventure, and I'm going for
There
it.
you go. Do you have a quick message to Thunderbird community, to students, alumni? Because it's played huge part in your life, in my life, and in so many people's lives.
I think we're all need to be points of light in this time. And I think, come in with a global mindset, and on the campus, we are citizens of the world. And I think we need that in this world, certainly in this country right now. And we can be points of light to uh, people that are in this country, trying to make it in this country, who are, trying to make it legally in this country, or doing anything they can. I think that we as graduates or students at Thunderbird, it's important to be points of light in our communities and in our spheres of influence in that way. And from both our education and our perspective, I think that's what I'd say to the
Got
Thunderbird
it. Got
community.
it. Thank you. And what's your next dream travel destination? And that's my last question.
Oh man, my list is so long with that one, Alex. Brazil, I think is and Turkey. Those are two of my dream destinations. I could go on
There,
and on, actually, but
there you go. Well,
I'll leave it there.
safe travels, Mark. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your inspiring story. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun talking to you and meeting you, and you lived the life of determination and perseverance, and you achieved amazing results, and that's why it's very inspiring. And I wish you lot of success in the future. Make another many films and movies. Best of luck.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it very much. Hopefully, I didn't talk your ear off too much.
No, that was great. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Okay. Thanks again. Take care.